jam-packed schedule with some really, really cool workshops that will really take you from absolute scratch up to being able to be really, really expert developers in the Tezos ecosystem. And especially cool is the fact that this one, and with Tezos, you can build some absolutely incredible stuff very quickly with a lot of the primitives that they've developed. So you'll have seen Claude with the Taquito t-shirt, which I'm sure you'll be making good use of. But without further ado, I wanted to hand over to John, who's going to welcome you to the Tezos Hacker House.
Thank you very much. Cool. I want to start off by just asking how many people here have had previous exposure to the blockchain? Can you raise your hands if you know blockchain stuff? Cool. And how many have had exposure to Tezos? Cool. And the last question is, how many people here from Queen Mary College? Cool. I was you 30 years ago, so it's a pleasure to see you here. Okay, so this is the introduction talk, and in general, we're going to try and keep all the talks relatively short to have lots of time for questions, and we're going to try and focus on really practical things to get you up and running as fast as possible. If you have any questions, please interrupt me and ask them, and in particular, I talk really fast, so if I start to go too fast for people to keep up with, just stop me. So I am John Newby. I'm the director of TZ Connect, which is a Berlin company, part of the Tezos ecosystem. We exist to make technology to educate people to promote the blockchain generally. This is my colleague Abhishek Jain, who is the engineering director of Utilitech, a London entity, Diego Peralta, Suzanne Soy, Claude Bard, and Kitty Boriza. And we're all here to help you today, so stop us if you see us, if you've got any questions, if you want anything extra explained, that's what we're here for. So just quickly, Tezos in facts and figures, for anyone who's had exposure to other blockchains, or to just tell you what the big things are that we're going to talk about today. So the Tezos blockchain makes a block every 30 seconds, and it supports 3 elliptic curves, so 3 asymmetric encryption systems. There is an official Tezos implementation written in a language called OCaml, which is called Octez. Tezos was that OG proof-of-stake blockchain. You may have heard of the merge when Ethereum switched. Tezos has been doing this for a long time. Because Tezos originates from France, the terminology is sometimes a little odd, so miners in Tezos are referred to as bakers. One of the bits of Tezos' secret sauce is that it has on-chain democracy, so the bakers vote in proportion to the number of tests. People are delegated to them on the direction that the blockchain takes, which means that we achieve consensus, we achieve agreement on what the new features are going to be, and the community have a really meaningful way to participate in the direction that the blockchain takes. And the way that this democracy takes form is that every 3 months, typically, the blockchain upgrades itself very quietly, and new features become available, and performance increases happen, it becomes cheaper to run. And in this way, we try to stay ahead of the curve of the state of the art in blockchain. Anyone who comes from an Ethereum background may have had exposure to Solidity, which is very much a traditional virtual machine-based, a traditional virtual machine with a big blob of memory and very loose typing. Tezos is very different. It uses a stack-based VM, which is functional and incredibly strongly typed. And the reason for this is that we try to be correct. So we try to avoid all of those scandals that you may have read about in which people lose hundreds of millions of dollars worth of crypto assets because of a bug which nobody had noticed, by having a really easy to understand, really formally correct smart contract virtual machine, which makes the smart contracts extremely understandable and extremely predictable. Again, relatedly, you can't just call another contract from a Tezos smart contract and get a result back. This stuff is very formalized. And again, this is to try to make the smart contracts work in a very predictable, very safe fashion. When you call a contract, you pay using gas. And there is a maximum amount of gas that you can expend on a smart contract call. but you don't pay extra for the gas use. So you can do computation up to the maximum without paying any more. And finally, the native token for the Tezos blockchain is called Tez. So there's an awful lot of parts of the Tezos ecosystem. There are several smart contract languages, there are several client libraries, there are several indexes. We're going to stick to talking about a few of them today, which we personally have expertise in and which we will be able to support you in meaningfully. If you want to use anything else, of course that's absolutely fine and we will help you as best we can, but these are the things that we're competent and comfortable to assist you in. So yeah, stick to them if you can, but if you want to go off-piste, then good luck to you. Okay, so the Tezos node is a relatively lightweight program in comparison to, for example, the Ethereum node. You can still run it on a Raspberry Pi, and many people do. As described, there's a new version of the protocol every 3 months, and this tends to be synchronized with a new version of the node software which supports the new features. There's a Dockerized sandbox, so a Dockerized private Tezos blockchain called FlexTeser, which permits you to do testing and on your own machine and to run the blocks much faster than every 30 seconds. I think some of my colleagues are going to be explaining a little bit more how that you can interact with that. Of course, there's a variety of public nodes, and there's a list in the repository for this presentation, which we'll circulate, I think, at some point. And apart from the mainnet, which you have to pay to use, there are testnets, and the most useful one is GhostNet, which is charmingly named. And finally, the Tezos node comes with the command line tool Octez, which I'm going to show you the use of in a bit, which is like the very most basic way to interact with the Tezos blockchain. You can do things in a more convenient fashion, but what I want to do in this initial presentation is to show you the nuts and bolts of it, and then we can, and then my colleagues are going to show you the higher level interactions. But I come from a past age, so I like the simple stuff. There's a list of public nodes at this URL, which is in the notes of the presentation. Apart from, as described, there's multiple testnets and ghostnets, the one that we're going to be interacting with most today. You need testnet Tez in order to get started, which you get from something called a faucet, or you can get it from one of us, because we are all rich in testnet Tez, if not in real Tez. And the faucet that we tend to use is called faucet.ghostnet.testnet.xyz. And I'm going to show you the use of that in a moment. So, right, how do I make the mic? How do I be able to use two hands? Okay, so what I'm just going to show you now is the way that we're going to interact with the faucet and with the testnet in order to get some Tez, so that everything else that we do today we can do using these testnet Tez that we've got. So the first thing we're going to do is to find a RPC node that we're going to use, which we get from this Tezos Taquito site, and we're going to use this ghostnet node. So we'll copy the link address. And then we're going to use the Octez client. We're going to give it the address of this testnet node that we've got, and we're going to say gen keys my key. Okay, and now we can see that we say list known addresses, and we now know about my key. So we're going to copy this, and we're going to go to our faucet, which I believe I have here, and we're going to put our address in, and we're going to request 100 Tez, which is more than enough for everything that we're going to do today. Okay, and now as usual, I must persuade Google that I am not. It's a beautiful thing. Okay, cool. One of the other lovely things about the testnet is that it runs twice as fast as mainnet, so you shouldn't have to wait terribly long to see the result. So we're going to say get balance for my key, and we have 100 Tez. For a lot of the stuff that you're going to do later today, you're going to have to know the private key to your account, because this is the thing that Taquito uses, that the Python SDK uses, everything uses to sign transactions. And when we use Octest client, we find that in Tezos client/secret keys. And here we can see we have my key, and it has this address which is unencrypted, and which is this. What we're going to do is we're going to import this into Temple Wallet, which is a web wallet which you can use to interact with the blockchain through web pages. And later, when I do a contract presentation, we're going to come back to this and use this private key, which we will by then have deployed a contract using to do some contract interactions through the web page. So here's Tezos client. One of the annoying things about it is that it really doesn't like to maintain its state if you have to switch away from it. So I'm going to make sure I've copied this properly. And very secure password I use for my test lab, as you can all see. Okay, so now we're going to import this account using its private key. We just paste it in. And now we have a brand new account, and if we switch here to the GhostNet, we can see that we have 100 tests. Okay, back to the presentation. So as described, the private key, the private key contains within itself a public key. So when you pass an account around using the private key, you then automatically have the public key available to you. Private keys for real accounts must be kept super secret, and in general, don't reveal your password by accident to a room full of strangers. For testing, it's useful to use your key with different wallets. So this is the reason that we take out the private key and we import it, and as we saw before, we've imported the key. Okay, so the Tezos node's job is to talk to all of the other Tezos nodes and to make sure that the state of the blockchain is consistent and correct. It really doesn't want to help you with answers to your questions if that is the slightest bit of effort to the node, because the node's job is to maintain consensus. So we have a whole family of websites and applications which read the state of the node, of the blockchain from the beginning to the end, which look at all of the data which is inside it, and which answer questions for us about what its contents of storage are, what funds have been sent from one place to another, who owns what NFT, so a kind of a higher level of abstraction on the top of the basic storage. Of course, as with everything else, there are several indexes for the Tezos blockchain, and our favorite is TZKT at the moment, although we are fickle and this may change. And so let's just use this to look at our MyKey. So we will switch to GhostNet. We'll put in our key. And you can see that 3 minutes ago I received a transfer of this. So later when we go a bit further and we deploy contracts, there will be more interactions here, and we'll be able to look at more infrastructure on the blockchain that belongs to this account. But right now, we've just funded it, and that's all we can see. Okay, so this is the end of my prepared part. I would really love any questions you've got about, and yeah, anything we can clear up about what happens next.
Can we find those slides somewhere?
Sorry, mate.
Can we find those slides somewhere?
Yeah, I'll get them shared. So a couple of things that I have not mentioned yet. One is that there's going to be a Discord for this, which we will be distributing the means of accessing, and we'll also use that, I think, to post all of the resources. We'll share all of the repositories that we talk about, all of the links to documentation, everywhere that you need to go to get the resources you need to participate in the hackathon. So yeah, thanks for that. Cool. Oh yes, one more thing. So how many people here are planning on doing something related to NFT minting today? Yeah, cool. So our team has developed some tools which do the sort of first 50% of NFT minting much more easily than it would otherwise be. You can stop us and ask about that stuff and we'll explain it to you. If there's the desire for it, we can also just do a workshop which lasts about half an hour on getting set up with minting NFTs, where we can all just install the software together and mint our first NFTs. So if there's a desire for that, then stop me after the presentation and we will make it happen. Yeah, please.
Is there any other resources that you can look at, or like any tools that are?
Yeah, let me just go to. Let's say. Okay, so this is the resources which we made to go with the presentation. Again, we'll post this link afterwards so you can all see it. So we have the link to the Lego website. That's the smart contract language that we love the most. The link to Taquito, which is the best SDK in this or any other world. The Tezos, which for anyone who wants to do Python or more command line stuff is useful. We're not going to drill down into it too much right now, but again, if you want to know about it, stop us. The command line tool that I just used, there are packages for Ubuntu and for the Mac here. If you're using Windows, I would recommend that you install the Linux subsystem for Windows and treat your Windows machine like an Ubuntu box. It will cause you the least amount of pain. If you happen to want to install the node, which here's the link to that. OpenTezos.com. This is the best collection of Tezos documentation, in our opinion. And when we start talking about Beacon, which is the wallet connection API, this is the website where you can find out all of the information about that. We mentioned Flex Tezos. Michelson is the low-level language of the Tezos virtual machine. We're not going to talk very much about it, except to show what it looks like. People don't tend to do serious work in Michelson. It's not a super friendly language to work in, but it's good to have a basic understanding of it. We talked about TZKT, which is our favorite blockchain explorer. Better Cool Dev is old-fashioned but more charming, I would say. And TZ-Stats is another one. And as we discussed before, there's a list of RPC nodes here. So, yeah, so I think this is the sort of 101 for getting up and running on the Tezos blockchain. Anything else? Please, yeah.
You said the blockchain upgrades itself every 3 months. Is that
Yeah.
done by the community or is it done by you guys?
Sorry, is that
done by like community or?
Yeah, so the protocol upgrade is a signed piece of OCaml code, because OCaml is the native language of the Tezos blockchain. So what happens is this. People suggest a protocol upgrade, which may be faster block times, more features, lower gas fees, contracts that live permanently on the chain and provide infrastructure, and the community will vote upon them. The voting, assuming the voting is correct, it then goes through a period in which the new protocol is run on the testnet for a while in order to determine that it's stable, that it's useful, that there's no surprises. If everything goes well then the nodes automatically pull this piece of OCaml code into themselves, compile it, and execute it. So the whole thing happens basically without any human intervention. There's always about 2 minutes after a protocol upgrade in which everybody's heart is in their mouth and no blocks are generated, and then it always works. But it's always fun to sit there, especially if you're on the Slack, while the developers are wondering whether this is the week that they have to admit failure. Anyone else? Yeah, please.
Hi, I'm a bit new in blockchain. I'm a bit confused with the fee structure of smart contracts. What would you consider when you're trying to understand what is the trade-off between having a very large smart contract or many small contracts interacting with each other?
Yeah, I mean the first piece of advice if you're thinking of writing a smart contract is don't write a smart contract. As we're going to talk about later, they are fiddly to write, they operate in an extremely resource-constrained environment, and they cannot be fixed once they're deployed. So the less code you have running on the blockchain, the happier your life will be. Arthur Brightman, who's one of the founders of Tezos, said, if you can write 100 lines of code off-chain, and that replaces 1 line of code executing on-chain, then that's a good deal for you. In terms of like having small contracts that operate, that do one simple thing, it's always better to have simplicity, especially when we're dealing with stuff which is running on chain and which may be dealing with like large quantities of money. You know, in DeFi, you really want to have something simple and understandable. Tezos doesn't make it as easy as Ethereum to have inter-contract calls by design. So in general, I would say, if you're thinking of writing something on chain, really think, does it need to be here? I mean, if we take a stupid example, if you wanted to know the square root of something, you could write a piece of code that works on the blockchain that approximates the square root using one of the well-known algorithms. Or you could calculate it off-chain and have code on the chain that simply multiplies the number by itself and checks that the result is correct. One of these things can take a ton of computation and will cost you money every time you run it. The other one, you know how complicated it is because multiplication is a very simple primitive. You have the same effect, but you're doing the work where it belongs, which is off the blockchain, and you're confirming the result where it belongs, which is on the blockchain. The blockchain is there to enforce correctness, not to perform computation. Cool, somebody, there we go, now I can actually see you. Anyway, yeah, please.
Does the Tezos ecosystem work with Chainlink? And if it doesn't, how do you incorporate external information?
We do have oracles. Do we have Chainlink? I kind of think we do, but
I'm not really sure. Yeah, we're talking about it, but
let's ask the Google machine. Tezos and Chainlink team up. So yeah, we do. In general, if we're like asking about oracles, then we can just go to OpenTezos, which is our friend in these times, and look at on-chain oracles, and we can see a list. So, yeah. And again, if you want, yeah, please.
I just had a query about when I was researching what was the difference between the Lego smart contract and smart contract language and smart pi.
They both fundamentally do the same thing in that they generate contracts on the Tezos blockchain. When you compile, when you run smart pi, what you're doing is executing a Python program which creates a smart contract. You're not quite compiling; it's more like metaprogramming. I personally don't think that it's a natural fit to use a loosely typed dynamic language to write code which is destined for a functional, strongly typed virtual machine. So, and this is why Lego is like our clear favorite. People really like SmartPy because it's approachable. They're used to Python, and you can get running relatively quickly. But I mean, basically, they're two routes to the same destination, and if one works better for you, then it's the right one for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. In terms of, you were saying that it costs money to run. What do you exactly mean by that?
That it costs money to run a smart contract?
Yeah.
Yeah, so lots of the conversation that we have about blockchain is about making sure that the incentives are correct, so making sure that people are rewarded for good behavior and that bad behavior is costly. So because your smart contract executes on all of the nodes which are participating in consensus, so it's running on hundreds of machines around the world. What we don't want to do is force all of those machines to, for example, I don't know, count all the numbers from 1 to a billion for no good reason. And so we do that by making one pay for the computation. You pay for running your contract, and you pay in particular for storage. Because when the blockchain storage grows, it grows on every node around the world. And if it grows too large, then the barrier to running a node becomes high and the blockchain suffers. So what we do is we make you pay for these, so you think twice before you do it. On the testnet, obviously you can do whatever you want because testnet TES are cheap. But in the real world, TES costs money, and we charge you to encourage you to do good things. And then because running a node is a certain amount of effort as well, we then distribute some of those fees that people get paid to run their programs, their contracts, to the node operators to reward them for participating in consensus. Okay, cool.